So we have arrived to the Battle of Adrianople. Last time this is the fourth part of the Fourth Crusade series. Um, yeah, last video was probably the saddest video Kings and Generals has ever produced and that we've ever seen. So let's see how everything kept going after that.
After embarking on the Fourth Crusade, an army mostly made of Venetian forces sacked Constantinople and started dividing the Eastern Roman Empire. However, the Byzantines still had holdings both in Europe and Asia, and they would remain a player going forward. At the same time, other regional powers were now stirred and looking to exploit the new power balance. Among them was the Second Tsardom of Bulgaria, and the clash between the Bulgars and Crusaders would lead to the famous Battle of Adrianople in 1205. The Byzantine Empire and the likes were always formed as a union of various cultures, and the sponsor of this video, Humankind, is a great representation of this historic. The Latin Empire, as we know it today, is a historiographical name, as the Crusaders considered themselves the direct successors to the Roman Empire, and continued.
You just murdered Rome. What the heck? You know what's funny with the Byzantines and the Western Europe is that the Byzantines are Rome. It'd be like if half of America fell. It's still America. I mean, granted, half would fall, but America would still be America. Rome is the exact same. People talk about the Byzantines as if they were completely different, the true successor of Rome, or some completely different thing. It's like, it is Rome. It's not a successor. It is Rome. It's the other part that didn't fall. And so, these Western European nations coexisted with Rome, and they, from what I get the impression, they didn't like them, and obviously killed them, and, helped play a part in their death, almost callous. And then meanwhile, all claiming to want to be Rome, the true successor of Rome. It's like, Rome's right there still, and then once it died, they help kill it. I guess we're Rome now. What? That's murder and identity theft. That is not cool, Europe, And then when Rome actually completely died by the hands of the Ottomans, everyone from then on has been like, I'm the successor of Rome. I'm Rome. I'm Rome. You're Rome. She's Rome. We're all Rome. It's like, guys, it was right there. You ignored it. I think they were happier when Byzantium fell. They were like, awesome. Now that Byzantium's gone, it would be awkward to claim to be Rome while Rome is still around, so I'm glad it's dead. So now I can be Rome. You get where I'm getting at, right? It's like, guys, cut it out. Rome's dead. There's no successor of Rome. Benito Mussolini, you're not restoring the Roman Empire. Rome's dead. It's been dead for a long time. No one is Rome, unfortunately. Rome's gone, guys. I'm sorry, I'm ranting right now, because it annoys me so much,
To call it Imperii Romani. They kept the customs, the bureaucratic systems, and the local government intact.
Okay, Coritanis and the clothing for the royal family were particularly the same, and the Latin Empire continued the tradition of giving birth to royal children in the special
An attempt to win over the local population. This came as a great surprise to the Holy Roman Emperor.
The Latin emperors recognized the Holy Roman emperors as the legitimate Roman emperors. They also claimed the title for themselves, which was not recognized by the Holy Roman Empire in return. Gosh, this is just a mess.
As for centuries, the East and West argued over the title of emperor, a dispute which did not end with the dissolution of the empire itself. The two most fundamental changes enacted by the new regime were the creation of the Latin Patriarchate of Constantinople and the introduction of Western feudalism. Despite his excommunications and outrage at the sack of Constantinople, Pope Innocent III was eager to end the East-West schism and sent out a Venetian, Tommaso Morosini, who became the first Patriarch of Constantinople.
His tenure was troubled and decreased the Latin Church's prestige. Because of him, the majority of Greeks transferred their allegiance to the Empire of Nicaea.
Still, Catholic influence did not extend beyond the city itself, which continued to have a strong Orthodox clergy. There was no persecution or forced conversion, as the Crusaders desperately tried to win over the vast population. As for the feudal structure of the Latin Empire, one can view that change as a continuation of the reforms started by the Komnenos dynasty, only even more complicated. The empire was divided into fiefs, with vassal lords swearing fealty to the emperor, who controlled a quarter of the imperial territories and city, while the other 3/4 were divided between the Crusaders and Venetians. The Venetian Doge, Enrico Dandolo, was officially recognized as ruler of 1/4, and half of the Roman Empire, was granted Hagia Sophia, and was the only one who didn't have to swear allegiance to the emperor. The rest of the Crusaders were direct vassals, ruling vast lands at least in name, since nearly all of the lands they claimed were unconquered. In fact, the emperor considered Bulgaria, Nicaea, and Trebizond not as enemies he had to vanquish, but rebels who defied his rightful claim. As for the emperor himself, the crown was originally offered to the old and blind Enrico Dandolo, but keeping with the principles of the Republic, the Doge declined. Afterwards, a council of 12 electors, 6 Venetians and 6 Crusaders, was formed. In the end, it was a tie between 2 candidates, Boniface of Montferrat and Baldwin of Flanders. The Venetians, who had the decisive vote, picked the latter candidate, as they were worried that Boniface might favour the Genoans, who were close to his homeland. Boniface did not take the loss well, and demanded that he receive the second city in the empire, Thessaloniki, as well as the already promised islands of Euboea and Crete, to which the new emperor agreed. A month after the city fell, Baldwin was crowned, and soon his forces spilled out in all directions to solidify their feudal claims. City after city surrendered to them, and had Latin garrisons installed, but it was not long before tensions escalated. Baldwin suddenly changed his mind and took Kavala and Thessaloniki himself, while Boniface took up arms against him, seized Vivimotico, and began attracting the locals, who preferred him due to the fact he already married the former wife of Isaac II, Margaret of Hungary. Next, he laid siege to Adrianople, but by that time, the rest of the Crusaders received word of the conflict and sent messengers to both men in an effort to restore the peace. Realizing their struggle would mean the end of their new empire, Baldwin reaffirmed and expanded the rights of Boniface, who became the King of Thessalonica. While no blood was spilled, the Crusaders showed weakness, and the locals immediately sent out letters to their old enemy, Kalyan of Bulgaria, who shared their hatred, and promised him the crown if he saved them from the Crusaders. This pact was solidified by none other than the Patriarch of Constantinople, who had taken refuge in Vivimotico. The previous year, Kalyan reached out to the Crusaders and offered his help, but they scolded him, replying that he should address them not as equals, but as a servant addressing his master. The king was furious.
Boy, yeah, the Romans insulted the Bulgarians and they gained independence. The Crusaders insult the Bulgarians and I think they're gonna be a problem. Guys, we need to stop insulting the Bulgarians when they're actually trying to help. Like, it doesn't work out well.
Not only at the insult, but at the fact that he spent years placating the Pope to receive his crown and insignia, while a simple count without either was elevated to emperor, which was the original goal of the Asen dynasty. Baldwin solidified his rule over Thrace and found Alexios V. The new emperor used this opportunity to solidify his legitimacy, so he raised him on top of a tall marble column in the middle of the hippodrome and made the entire city of Constantinople watch their last emperor fall to his death.
How did you think that was gonna, like... I'm assuming the people are gonna lose their crap over that. They're already angry that they've basically... their city has been sacked. The Roman Empire is gone at the moment by foreigners that they already dislike for many reasons. So I get, like, killing him to solidify your position, but, like, making a big spectacle of it, I'm assuming trying to win the people over or show them. If they rebel, it's all on him. Like, I'm assuming they're gonna rebel right now. And rightfully so.
In the east, the emperor's brother, Henry, advanced on Lapadium and Adramyttium, which fell without resistance. But then suddenly he was ambushed by forces of one of the Byzantine pretenders, Theodore Mancaphus of Philadelphia.
The chaos of the Fourth Crusade, the eventual fall of Constantinople, a number of individuals took advantage of the situation to proclaim themselves independent or lay claim to the vacant imperial throne.
However, the sight of the heavily armoured knights and their lances prevented his men from taking any action, and they were decisively routed, despite their superior numbers. That humiliating defeat ended the first successor state, which was absorbed by Theodore Lascaris of Nicaea, who used the weakness of his rival to expand his own claim. The other contender to the throne, David Komnenos of Trebizond, who was able to take over his ancestral homeland with the help of the Queen of Georgia, Tamar the Great, moved his forces to occupy Nicomedia, soon realizing that in this conflict, religion, culture and allegiances constantly shifted as Theodore Lascaris moved his troops through a secret pass, outmaneuvering the forces of Trebizond. David Komnenos was caught off guard, but the timely action of the Latins, who came to rescue the city, forced both successor states to abandon their campaigns. One of the most important aspects of the regional struggle was the fact that the Crusaders were very few in numbers, and in order to keep the empire from falling apart, Baldwin gave huge concessions to the locals and his allies, but this meant that the Latins could not afford any drastic changes in command or signs of weakness. Karyan finally decided to act, and sent 5,000 Greeks to rebel against the Latins. The first cities to rebel were Adrianople and Vivimotico, and their garrisons were killed. Most of the Crusaders were either in Greece or Asia Minor, spread even thinner, but since Nicaea and Trebizond were busy fighting each other, Baldwin managed to recall his men from the east to deal with this new threat. Most of the Philippopolis defenders also tried to unite with the main host, but were intercepted and slaughtered. On March 25, 1205, Emperor Baldwin, Doge Dandolo, and Louis of Blois marched to Adrianople. We don't have a concrete number for the crusading army, but it had around 5,000 troops, among them around 1,000 horsemen and 300 knights. Upon approaching the city, they began constructing siege weapons and digging tunnels underneath the walls, which were flying Bulgarian banners. The Crusaders wanted to deal with this threat before Karyan could arrive, so they were disorganized, coming in waves, and very short on supplies. Some of them attempted to assault a nearby castle and raid its stores, but were unsuccessful. On April 13th, Karyan arrived with a large army that included many Cuman horsemen. Once again, the number of troops Karyan had is disputed, with the Crusader chronicler Geoffrey of Villardun claiming that they had around 50,000, while modern historians think that the number was around 8,000. The Bulgarians camped 8 kilometers away from the city, and sent a contingent of Cuman horse archers to harass the grazing sheep and horses. Mounted knights gave chase and tried to retaliate, but the lightly armoured Cumans gave them a taste of the feigned retreat tactic which a certain Mongol warlord was preparing to unleash on the other side of the world. Taking light
Love hearing that reference. But are they able to lure them right
in their
now?
unsuccessful attempt, the knights returned to the camp. That night, all of the leaders gathered for a war council, and the emperor ordered that no man should chase after the enemy. Instead, the army was to form lines and hold their formation. On the next day, after studying the path the small contingents of knights chose to follow, the Bulgarians gambled that they would repeat their mistake, and positioned their troops in an ambush at a narrow corridor between the Tunja River and a forested hill, and dug out pits in the middle, which were concealed. This time, the Cumans aimed at the tents where many crusaders were having lunch. Despite the direct orders, one of the most notable crusaders, Louis of Blois, gathered his men and charged at the light cavalry. The man was regarded as a capable commander and hungered for glory, and it's also important to remember that up until this moment, the Crusaders hadn't lost an open battle and made an entire empire fall to its knees.
So the overconfidence, friggin' Louis, the emperor literally made a commandment and the dude's like, I'm good, nah, I'd win, and then he just ran off like like an imbecile. Man.
One of the first nobles who took the cross ride out to certain doom, Baldwin rallied his troops and tried to aid his commander. The Crusaders proceeded to mount their horses in total disarray and follow after the Cumans while the Venetians continued the siege. Occasionally, the Cumans would turn around and fire at their horses, letting them close the distance before they galloped further into the valley, until eventually reaching the trap, where the rest of the Bulgarian army awaited the Crusader force. The Bulgarians rushed in from both sides, while more Cumans wheeled around to block any withdrawal.
This reminds me so much of Basil. The Bulgarians are the master of ambushes. Can I just say that the Bulgarians are living their best life? Yeah, the Bulgarians are living their best life because they literally willed themselves back into existence from the Romans, beat the Romans multiple times, gained the approval of the Pope, gained the approval of the Pope. Now we're being seen as the heroes by the defeated Greeks / Romans, and now we have orchestrated yet another great ambush that has defeated the likes of Basil and the last few Roman emperors. Like, the Bulgarians are living high right now. Like, they are winning in life, I feel. Like, you know. If this goes well, then yeah, I think my statement will hold true. Because the Bulgarians are just out here just at the best time, you know.
The heavily armoured knights were encircled and taken down from their horses, their necks exposed to knives and nooses, or smashed by blunt weapons. While the Crusaders were few in number, they represented the best the West had to offer. Still, Count Louis and around 300 knights perished that day, along with an equal number of mounted sergeants. Emperor Baldwin refused to flee and was captured by the Bulgarian force. The feudal system of the new Latin Empire was entirely broken with a single stroke, but Kalyan wanted to finish the job. He and his men rode out towards the main Crusader camp, which was ready to meet them, now commanded by the Marshal of the Empire, Geoffrey of Villadun. After a long stare down and the occasional arrow volley, the Crusaders' discipline did not fail, and the Bulgarians withdrew back to their camp for the night. Knowing that they would be assaulted the following day, the Crusaders lit many torches and quietly left the area before either side realized what was happening. Kalyan was surprised to find the camp deserted and sent his scouts to locate the enemy, but to no avail. He then stood at the gates of Adrianople, awaiting to be received by the citizens as their emperor. But history took a dramatic shift as the Greeks refused to open their gates. Despite their promises and careful planning, the key center Cao Yan needed to take on the road to the throne defied him, and he transformed into the Mad Tsar.
Yo, that sucks. The Greeks were really like, "Hey, help us, and you're our new guy." It's like awesome. He comes here, completely wipes the floor with the Crusaders, and they're like, "Nah, we're good. Just stay out." Like, this dude, I kind of feel bad for him. Like, he wanted the approval of the Pope, and obviously wanted to be seen as the next legitimate emperor. He was denied that by the West. He comes here as a hero, essentially, and he's denied by the Greeks, like, / Romans. Like, are you kidding me? Like, L after L. Even when he's winning, he's losing. Like, how do you not feel bad for the guy?
Baldwin's brother, Henry, was at that point returning from his victory over Theodore Mancaphus in Asia Minor. He had 20,000 Armenian men, women, and children who sided with him and thus drew the ire of the Greeks. Hearing of the defeat at Adrianople, Henry rushed with his troops to Thrace, leaving the civilians to their fate. According to the sources, they were slaughtered by the locals. Meanwhile, Cao Yan turned west and seized Ceres, and laid siege to it in late May. The city fell, but the citadel was hard to penetrate. The defenders offered their surrender if they were allowed safe passage. Although Cao Yan accepted this, he then executed them. Next came the cities of Veria and Almopia, which were razed to the ground and their populace relocated. Cao Yan was here to destroy, not conquer, and before long, he would take the nickname Roman Slayer. Unlike Basil II, the Bulgar.
Yeah, this guy's gone unhinged. He's like, them not opening the gates broke him mentally. He was like, I'm going to kill every Roman. I'm in my Hannibal Barca mindset now. I'm going to get my hands on every Greek / Roman and just slaughter them. Like, yeah, completely unhinged. And I kind of understand exactly why.
Slayer, who received his nickname long after his death. Cao Yan not only knew his title, but lived up to it, razing the city of Philippopolis on the way back to Tarnovo. After the Crusaders who survived Adrianople reached Redusto, they were joined by Henry's host, alongside the garrisons that managed to escape Cao Yan's wrath. The fate of Emperor Baldwin was unknown, with some thinking that he died of his wounds. We also have sources claiming that he would be a prisoner in Tarnovo, where Cao Yan tortured him to death. In any case, the situation looked bleak, and 7,000 of them decided to abandon the empire and sail back home, most of them Venetians. That same month, the 98-year-old Doge Enrico Dandolo died and was buried in Hagia Sophia. The Republic would vote whether to move their capital to Constantinople, but in the end, their commercial interests outweighed their political ones, and Venice would slowly shift its focus elsewhere. Henry was appointed as regent in the absence of Baldwin. He attempted to take Adrianople, but failed. His attempt to take Vivimotico was also unsuccessful, as he lost his siege equipment to a flood. Henry might have hoped to get the help of Boniface, but the latter was busy laying siege to Nafplio. As a result, the Crusaders just didn't have enough troops to defend any of their territories. All of Thrace, except for Redosto and Salimbria, rebelled or had been sacked, with only Biga under control on the other side of the channel. In January 1206, Cao Yan launched a new campaign, this time even more devastating than the last. As the Crusaders were still reeling from their loss, Cao Yan and his Cumans managed to destroy over a dozen major settlements, the cities reduced to ash, with their populace and cattle moved back to Bulgaria. One particularly brutal episode was the destruction of the great port city of Redosto, where many panicked at the mere sight of the Roman Slayer. So many Venetians jumped on their ships that many of them sank before the city fell and was destroyed like all the rest. As the Crusaders were moving men from one garrison to another,
he really is on his like freaking Hannibal Barca mindset. He's just like, I don't want anything. I just want to destroy all of you. I just want to kill all of you. Like, he's got unhinged. He lost his mind, dude. Adrianople really broke him, didn't it? He was like, fine, if I can't rule Rome, I will kill it even more. Like, you know, like, I mean, he's already dead at this point, but like, he's like, I'm gonna kill its corpse even more. Like, this is just overkill, you know what I mean? He's like, if I can't rule you, then I'll destroy you. Like, insane.
They were discovered by the Bulgarian force and had to accept battle near Russion. Several thousand men, along with over 100 knights, fought 7,000 Bulgarians. The Crusaders were soundly defeated as they crawled towards the safety of the nearby fortress, where all the defenders could do was watch as some of the best warriors were cut down. Following this campaign, the few remaining Greeks abandoned their own interests and sided with the Latins out of fear of the Roman Slayer and cooperated with Henry. Once he learned of this, Kalyan immediately laid siege to Vivimotico and razed it to the ground. The newly crowned Emperor Henry gave chase, and after a short skirmish, pushed back the Bulgarians, who left 20,000 men, women and children, carrying their belongings on over 3,000 wagons from the razed city. Henry rejoiced, as he managed to save the citizens of at least one of the destroyed cities, but this gives us an idea of the level of devastation Thrace suffered. The Eastern Roman Empire lost battles and lands before, but it was these events that left a scar that would never heal. Henry proceeded to return the favour by razing Thermopolis and Ankylos and several other Black Sea cities before returning to Adrianople. While the Crusaders were losing their positions in Thrace and Asia Minor, Theodore Lascaris of Nicaea turned his sights on Phrygia, defeating the claimant and splitting his lands with the Seljuk Sultan. Within the span of a year, Nicaea became the dominant power in the region, consolidating the lands of two other claimants and stopping the advance of a third. At the beginning of 1207, Lascaris proposed a joint attack on Constantinople, which Kalyan gladly accepted and began by laying siege to Adrianople with 33 trebuchets in April 1207. The defenders desperately tried to repair the damaged walls, and once a breach was made, they built a wooden palisade behind it and dug a trench in front of it as the Bulgarians started pouring in. The wall was set ablaze, and this forced the attackers to withdraw. After a month, Kalyan lifted the siege. Henry also fought off the Nicaeans, successfully leading to a truce, which ceded some territory so he could focus on the bigger threat in the west. Meanwhile, Boniface was still in Greece, where the tendency for lands which were under control of the empire and not some local noble to willingly surrender at the sight of the Crusader army continued. King Boniface already had a son with his queen Margaret, named Demetrius, and thousands of Greeks joined him at the sight of the small boy, which they believed was their future emperor. A powerful noble, Leosagoros, who took control of a portion of the northern Peloponnese, prepared to make a stand at the pass of Thermopylae, like his ancestors before him, before losing his courage at the approach of the armoured knights. At the same time, the Despotate of Epirus, controlled by Michael Comnenus Ducas, chose the diplomatic approach. The city of Dyrrhachium was lost to Venice, which also managed to take Corfu from Genoa in 1207, but the Republic was not interested in the rest of the country, which was at least on paper their domain. So Michael simultaneously swore fealty to Boniface instead of Baldwin and corresponded with the Pope, promising to accept Catholicism in return for protection. In reality, Michael was transforming his state into a safe haven for loyalists who wanted to escape the Latins, and ransomed Alexios III after he was captured by Baldwin. The Peloponnese was invaded from the north and south, as many crusaders who kept their vows and sailed to the Holy Lands from other ports now came towards Greece looking for land and glory. Even with complete naval supremacy, southern Greece was hard to conquer because of its many fortresses and mountainous terrain. All of that changed when the locals decided to meet the Crusaders in battle, outnumbering them 5-1, where once again the Crusaders were victorious. The Battle of the Olive Grove is sometimes described as the Hastings of Morea. Afterwards, nearly all of it surrendered, apart from Nafplio, Corinth, Argos and Laconia, who managed to resist for a few more years. After failing to move north into Bulgarian territory, Henry met up with Boniface in Kypsela to plan a joint attack against Kauyan. But on the way back to Thessaloniki, Boniface was killed in an ambush, and his head was sent to Kauyan. The Bulgarians immediately made their way back into the city, ready to destroy the kingdom. But the day before the planned assault, a man snuck into Kauyan's tent and stabbed him with a spear. He was the last of the 3 brothers to be assassinated, and for a brief moment amidst the chaos, both Latins and Greeks were relieved as the army went home.
Yeah, Cal was insane, man. He needed to be stopped because like he was gonna kill everyone. So yeah, getting rid of him probably the best thing you could do at that point.
That was the situation in the former territories of the Eastern Roman Empire in the aftermath of the sack of Constantinople. But that is hardly the end of our story, and in the next episode we will see the continuation of the rise of Nicaea, as well as the conflict between Bulgaria and the new states continuously forming in the region, culminating at the Battle of Kokodnitsa. So make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please.
Which we will be jumping to that next part 5, tomorrow, my friends. I'll see you then.